Well, after missing the entire second half of the season while recovering from a concussion, Dale Earnhardt Jr. has shared his offseason plans to return to a race car. Here's what he had to say Monday on his Dale Jr. Download podcast.
We're going to go testing this offseason. Obviously, I need to get in a race car. I'd love to get in a car and go run a little bit somewhere just to shake the rust off and get some confidence in myself that I can do the basics before we ever go to Daytona. So we'll go do that sometime this summer, or this offseason, Yeah, we got to squeeze it in there somewhere because I'm getting married and have my honeymoon, and I got to certainly devote proper time to Amy. But all signs point to us being in the car in Daytona, and I don't know if anybody had any doubt out there, but if you did, there looks like everything's going in the great direction for that to happen.
So some encouraging news, and Steve, I definitely want to hear from you on this, but just quickly, Nate, NASCAR modified its rules actually to allow for testing in the instance of a driver coming back from an injury. Can you explain that a little bit and how that works?
Sure, Carolyn. Well, as we know, Steve, teams aren't allowed to test at all at any point. And NASCAR added some rules to the 2017 rule book, some language that specified that if a driver is returning from a medical condition, as long as they have doctor approval and as long as it's monitored by NASCAR, they are allowed a one-day test to get acclimated to the car. So Dale Jr. will have this opportunity, even though technically there is a testing ban on everyone.
So, Steve, any idea how good his chances are for being cleared for 2017?
Well, all I know is every conversation I've had with Dale Earnhardt Jr. publicly, privately, really for the last months, all he has continued to tell me is he's excited and looking forward to getting back into a race car. So I go with the same information we all heard on the podcast, that it sounds like it's going that direction. Rick Hendrick alluded to that down in Miami, that they were hopeful in going to get him back into a race car. I applaud NASCAR for changing the rule. They'll oversee these tests. This will be a test of Dale Earnhardt Jr., not of the race team. They don't want to go out and test the vehicle. They need to test the driver and knock the rust off. But the other thing I heard that I think I enjoy the most is this is a Dale Earnhardt Jr. that now has two loves in his life that he has to split his time between. And I think when he gets back into a race car, that's going to make him an even better race car driver, to be able to share success and share things with his soon-to-be wife, Amy. So it is a busy offseason. He's got a lot to pack in. We'll see how he does with his scheduling.
That's a great point, Steve. And one thing that just kind of stood out to me there was when he talks about knocking the rust off. And I think, for a lot of fans out there might wonder, okay, what does that mean? Does it mean getting in there and not remembering how to turn the wheel, or, actually use the pedals? And it's just the little things as a driver. There's a little sensations you get about the tire, how you feel that tire, how you feel the car. And I think for Dale, he's been out of the car here. He's been dealing with this and recovering from this situation. He wants to just assure himself that he still has that feel. He remembers that feel. And I'm very confident when he gets in there, it will remind him. I think there's a lot of drivers that tell you they've taken time off, that come back, and it goes through every one of our minds. Does it suddenly fall out of your ear? Do you lose that talent? It's still there, but it's like riding a bike in a lot of ways. You got to do it to prove to yourself, I still got it.
Steve, you mentioned Amy, and I remember when you sat down with Junior, was it a month plus ago, and he was very quick to mention that she's been very supportive in all of this. And because he does have her in his life, and they're thinking about a family and all of these things, what a selfless decision on her part to allow him to pursue something that he is so passionate about, because there's a lot more at stake now when you realize that you're dealing with something like this.
Well, there is, but the one thing that can't change the people within the sport, whether it was myself as a crew chief when my wife met me before I was a crew chief, but I was a crew member, or Dale Earnhardt Jr., who's a race car driver, these aren't just careers. Crew chiefing wasn't just my career. Driving a race car isn't just Dale Earnhardt Jr.'s career. It's who he is. It's involved in his personality. It's involved in his life. It's really a part of him. And I think that is hard for people to understand. You talk about Greg Biffle. He wants to be in a race car because he's a race car driver. Dale Earnhardt Jr. wants to be in a race car because he's a race car driver. And I think people around him understand that. But the one thing I will say is being outside of the race car. We saw all that B-roll of him sitting on the wall, talking with Greg Ives, being on the pit box. We saw this with Kyle Busch, time away. We see this with Dale Earnhardt Jr., time away. It's going to be interesting to see when he gets back into the race car what his mentality is, what his patience are with the race team, because perhaps being out and understanding how the race team works in general a little bit better will make him an even more successful driver behind the wheel.
Yeah, it's a great point. If and when that happens, we wish him the best of luck. He did a nice job in our booth as well. He can always come up and hang out with us there anytime.
Anytime.
Yeah, absolutely.